Please turn to page 177 for informative explanatory writing at stage 9. At this stage, we're going to focus on the steps to learn how to write a thesis statement. That's the big idea statement about an essay. So notice, stage 9 is going to be a big jump. We are leaving the advanced paragraph level from stages 7 and 8, and stage 9 is our first step that will lead us finally to stage 10, an informative explanatory essay. Stage 9 is critical because that thesis statement is going to determine how to organize your essay as well as all the information that's going to be in your essay. Let's get started with the first page, and that is the chant. Whenever you're introducing something to your students, you always need to tell them what they're going to learn. And we always begin each one of our writing stages with a chant. Here's our chant for our thesis statement. We tell the students, boys and girls, we are going to learn how to write a thesis statement. That means we're going to learn how to write the big idea of an essay. And this is important because the big idea is going to tell you how to organize your paper and what information needs to be in your paper. Let's do our thesis statement chant. Thesis statement. SS light bulb. Oh, that's our secret formula. We know that. Setting, subject, big idea. We've learned that before. So we're using the same secret formula to make a thesis statement. Excellent. So it's not as if we're learning something completely different. We're going to take what we know and we're going to use that, but this time we're going to use it to make a thesis statement. So let's go back and continue with our chant. Ready, everyone? Thesis statement. SS light bulb. That's the big idea of an entire essay. That's what all the information in the essay is about. Oh, so we're going to learn using SS light bulb how to write the big idea of an entire essay. And what will be in an entire essay? There'll be an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. That's just like our paragraph. It had introduction, body, and conclusion. Now in the introduction, there's going to be a longer introduction where we're going to hook in the reader, give our thesis statement, maybe even add a description. And we'll have our body, which will have many main idea paragraphs about that thesis statement. Oh, these aren't details anymore. These will be paragraphs about that thesis statement. And finally, the conclusion, where it'll be a paragraph that will repeat the big idea and end it with a snappy ending. Why is it so important? So we know now that we're going to write that thesis statement about an entire essay, what the whole essay is about. Let's turn to pages 178 and 179 so we can look at the steps. Page 178 is the at-a-glance teacher chart for stage 9. These are all your steps listed out with added information that you can refer to when you're teaching students how to write a thesis statement. On the facing page, what you will see is a chart that you can display for your students so that they can follow the steps to write a thesis statement, as well as a checklist. When the students are finished writing this big idea, you can go back and you can use this checklist to make sure that they have all the elements in place that are necessary for a thesis statement. The good news about this chart is you can download it. In the tools section for informative explanatory writing are the downloadable charts for all the stages of writing. You don't need to make it, you can just download it and you're ready to have them follow the steps while you're teaching instruction. And that's critical. You don't want kids to follow along in a lesson and hope that they're identifying steps. You want to clearly, as you teach the lesson, tell each step as they're walking through the process, and in this case, of forming a thesis statement. So we had our chant to introduce our thesis statement. You have your teacher at a glance page. You want to display the steps for your students to follow along in the class. And after they're finished, you can use a checklist to see do they have all the elements in place. On page 180, I'm going to review and just give a little background about a thesis statement and the different ways that you form it before we actually walk through a couple of lessons in which we're forming this big idea statement. First of all, the thesis statement is found in the introduction of your essay. Let's go back to our organizer. Here's a piece of paper. We draw 2 lines. The top box is our introduction, the middle is our body, and the bottom is the conclusion. Just like we had when we were in the paragraph format. We're not changing things. We're just adding on and expanding what we learned at the paragraph level. And with the introduction, this is going to be 1 to 2 paragraphs, depending on what you need in your introduction. We have our introduction, 1 to 2 paragraphs, where we will hook in the reader and present our thesis statement. The big idea about the whole essay. The body is filled with main idea paragraphs, and those main ideas are about the thesis statement. And finally, the conclusion, which is going to be our paragraph that repeats the big idea and tells why all the information is important. So notice, we are building on and continuing what we learned at the advanced paragraph level. But stage 9 is now taking us to where we're just isolating and writing a thesis statement. Why? Because it takes skill to write a big idea about these main idea paragraphs. That is a skill in itself. So we want to isolate that and show children how to write this thesis statement so that when we go to stage 10 and actually write an essay, we have that learning under our belt. So we have our thesis statement. It's found in the introduction. And what does the thesis statement do? It tells you the big idea of the entire essay. What is the entire essay about? And because the thesis statement tells you the big idea, what all the information in the essay is about, then that should tell you how to organize the essay. And what I mean by that is how to organize the main ideas. Do those main ideas need to be in order, or they don't have to be in order? And that goes back to that whole idea of, do they have to be in a sequence, or can they be categorized, broken down into parts? We have to start each paragraph with telling what that paragraph is about. That's what we learned in the paragraph level in the preceding stages, 7 and 8, that topic sentence, what the whole paragraph is about. And that's that first sentence that we're going to start off our main idea paragraph with, is telling what that paragraph is about. And then we are going to support that main idea, that paragraph, with sentences, details that support it. And those details can be a definition, they can be a description, they can be a list, which is a list of information that has to be sequenced or can be in categories. And then we need to back up this information with examples, statistics, quotes, anything that can back up what we just said. So these are the types of details that we will have in our main idea paragraphs. So look at that. We have a thesis statement about the whole essay. Then we have in the body main idea paragraphs. We have to start off with that main idea sentence that starts each paragraph. That's going to tell what that paragraph is about. So we're going to have to look at the main idea sentence. Then after we tell the main idea sentence in that paragraph, then we look at, all right, what details do I need to support that main idea? Do I need a definition? Do I need to have a description, a list in which I sequence or categorize information? Do I need to back it up? This is what we're looking at the essay level. And in stage 9, we're going to focus just on the thesis statement. Let's go down here then to the bottom of our information page for stage 9, and that is generating the thesis statement. We're going to look at 2 ways to generate a thesis statement. 1, how do I generate it from just a brainstorm? Or how do I write a thesis statement using a prompt? What does it mean when we form a thesis statement from a brainstorm? That means we have to go to our brainstorm and find like main ideas. So as we look at all of the information we put on our brainstorm, we have to group main ideas that go together. And once we've grouped main ideas that go together, then we form the thesis statement. One other thing that I put here, because this is going to be in your introduction, your thesis statement, is do you need to include a description? That's critical. When you're writing a thesis statement, it's for that introductory paragraph or paragraphs. And sometimes your reader may need a description of the subject. If I was writing a thesis statement and I was writing about flowering plants, and I know that my reader needs to understand all the parts of a flower, that structure on a plant, before I even go into the information I'm going to tell them about flowering plants. What do I need to have in my introduction? I not only need to have a hook, I not only need to have my thesis statement, but I also need to have a description of that subject, a flowering plant. So when I say a description is optional only if it's needed, that's because I always go back and say, before I tell the information in my main idea paragraphs, does my reader, in order to understand that information, need to know the subject? Would they already know this subject? Is it common? Or do I need to go and write a description of the subject so they clearly understand what this subject is before I give information? When we go to the prompt, notice I say read, then form the thesis statement. They have to learn how to read the prompt, and from reading the prompt, then they can form their thesis statement. So let's get started. First, we will go through how to look at a brainstorm. Then we will go to a prompt. Let's go to page 181 to begin the process of using our brainstorm that we have done previously about plants, how to take that brainstorm, put together certain information, and form a thesis statement. Notice on page 181, we are looking at a thesis statement from a brainstorm. So from our brainstorm, here's the brainstorm that we have done on a previous video. So you'll need to go back to that video if you haven't seen it to see how we put together this brainstorm. On our brainstorm, notice we have main ideas and details, as well as information if I need to write a description of this subject. First thing you do when you're forming a thesis statement, you look at this brainstorm and say, okay, we've brainstormed all this information. Now what we want to do is we want to look at any of our main ideas that we could group together so that we could write an essay. As you can see, we have up here plants, and what do? They make their seeds through cross-pollination. Seeds spread in different ways. So look what I'm doing. I'm reading the main ideas of each paragraph to see if any of them will go together. Well, I could write an essay which has a paragraph that's going to tell about how they make their seeds through cross-pollination, and then how they spread them once the seeds are made so that they can go in different areas so they actually have enough space, food, sunlight, and room in order to grow. These could go together. Let's keep going. There's many different types of flowers. Oh, so we're talking about flowering plants, and flowering plants are the types of plants that need to have cross-pollination to make their seeds. So they're looking at many different types of flowering plants. Maybe I could start my essay in the body with the types of flowering plants, how they cross-pollinate, and then how they spread. I could go in that direction. Let's go down here. Ooh, some plants reproduce, make their seeds through self-pollination. These two can go together. I could just write an essay about the different ways plants reproduce their seeds through cross-pollination or self-pollination. Down here I have seeds. The seeds are the special house for where an embryo grows. Once I have all the different ways a seed spreads to different places, then I could talk about the seed itself. There's many different ways that you can group together these main ideas. That in itself is a wonderful thinking activity. Notice we had many different ways that we could group together these main ideas. In our example that we have here, we decided to take cross-pollination and self-pollination. In order to synthesize these two main ideas together to come up with the big idea, we need to generalize. We're going to go back to no order, order to help us figure out how to take these two main ideas and turn them into the thesis statement. What is this about? A flower, okay? What about the flower or plant? What's your big idea? What's the whole essay going to be about? Let's go look at our main ideas. Cross-pollination, self-pollination. Let's look at our cards then. Do those main ideas have to go in order when we're presenting them? Do they belong in a certain order? Or they don't have to go in order? They don't have to go in order. So if they don't have to go in order, what am I going to ask those main ideas? I'm going to ask them the categories question. How are these two main ideas the same? How is this information the same? Self-pollinization, cross-pollinization. What are both of those about? Oh, they're about plants reproducing through pollination. They're types of pollination. Oh, okay. So that's how I went up to my generalizing. I'm not saying specifically those main ideas. I'm generalizing that this is about how a plant makes its seeds through pollination. That's my generalization. And how did I do that? I took the main ideas, I put them together and asked, how are they the same? That's your generalizing question. What if we decided that we weren't going to do these two boxes, cross-pollination and self-pollination? What if we said self-pollination, cross-pollination, and seeds spread in different ways? Those are our main ideas. Do those main ideas have to go in order or don't have to go in order? They have to go in order because first of all, we need to have them become seeds. So I need to talk about how they become seeds, and then the next main idea needs to go into, once they're seeds, then I need to tell you how they spread the seeds in different places. So our main idea boxes are going to be pollination, maybe I'll start with self-pollination, go to cross-pollination, and then the last main idea box is going to be how they spread their seeds. So we sequenced our main ideas. Now we're going to ask that sequence question. What's happening in this sequence of main ideas? Oh, so this is about a flower and how a flower makes its seeds and then scatters them far away so they can grow. That's our big idea. We took that sequence of main ideas and then we asked what's happening in order to form the thesis statement, the big idea about all of these paragraphs in the middle. Step 1, we decided which main ideas went together. Step 2, then we asked the question that will tell us the big idea that will get us to that thesis statement. Let's go to the next page so I can walk you through the secret formula once we've done this work from a brainstorm. Once you have discussed and identified what that big idea is, then you are ready to use the secret formula. Now, the secret formula is the SS light bulb. That's when you are following your stage 9 steps. On page 178, that was the at-a-glance teacher steps to follow. Page 179 was a visual of a chart that you could display for the students to follow. So once you've discussed your big idea from your brainstorm, then you'll say, all right, boys and girls, let's use our steps in order to form our thesis statement. Step 1, get organized. Use the secret formula, SS light bulb. So notice on our paper here, we wrote SS light bulb. And we drew a line after that. So this was empty. We didn't have a picture in here. We didn't have any of this. We just had SS light bulb. We wrote SS light bulb on our paper. Then we drew a line next to it because we knew that after we have our thesis statement, what did we need? We needed a description of the subject. So this box will be our description where we'll draw the subject, label the parts, tell the function of the parts. So we have that information to give background about the subject. So we have our SS light bulb. That was step 1. What's the first S for? Setting. Setting tells us time and place. So we look at our wrist, point to it for a watch, time, and look out, place. Setting tells us time and place. What's the second S for? We pretend like we're holding a book, a textbook. We open it up and say subject. Who or what is this information about? And then our light bulb is, what's the big idea about the essay, the whole essay? And why is it so important? Our number 1 step, SS light bulb, we write down in order to form our thesis statement. This secret formula will help them identify what needs to be in my big idea, as well as how to form that into a powerful sentence. We had our setting, subject, big idea. We wrote that down on our paper, we drew a line, and we know we're going to have a box next to it for our description. Once we had step 1, secret formula, written down on our paper, then we go to step 2, and we're going to go to the middle, the subject. Who or what is this information about? So we said that we were talking about cross-pollination and self-pollination. Who or what is that about? That's about a flower. Once we identified the subject is a flower, we just drew it. You could write the word flower, you could draw a simple icon. It just needs to be keywords, simple drawings, fast and quick. Underneath it, we added something, and that's so that we could have an appositive. That's where you take the subject and then you're telling more about the subject. In this case, we said a flower. Can you tell me a little bit more about a flower? It's a part of a plant, but it's a reproductive structure in which it houses the male and female organs. Notice, and I'm going to write this word here right now. I'm not forming any sentences. I am only recording ideas, and that's critical. If you're trying to form a sentence as you're thinking about ideas, many students are going to freeze up and they have a difficult time doing both simultaneously. First thing you're doing is saying, subject, who or what are we writing about? And you're recording that information. I'm only recording ideas. I'm not trying to say the sentences at the same time. This does not mean that I'm going to use all these ideas when I create my thesis statement, but at least the ideas are on my organizer. Let's go to our next step. Step 3, what's the big idea? What information am I telling you about a flower? 2 ways a plant reproduces its seed. Those are 2 types of pollination. We went over to our big idea and we wrote create seeds, how it fertilizes its plant in this process called pollination. We're going to go to our next step, and that is going to be setting. Time and place. Do I need to specify a time and place for this information? No, we're going to X out our setting because we're not going to worry about the time and place for this. We're just focusing on flower and how a flower is going to make its seeds in a process called pollination. We're going to practice putting together these ideas so that we have that academic language in order to produce a thesis statement. A flower is a reproductive structure in which seeds are created in a process called pollination. Oh, look at that. I'm going through and I'm taking the information and I'm practicing it. I also would suggest that you add motions to bring in the modalities of students that need to move and need that tactile kinesthetic type of activity in their thinking. So we have a flower, a structure in a plant that houses the female and male organs, produces the seeds in a process called pollination. That sounds pretty good. So we go back and we orally rehearse this over and over. Once we have that down, we could take out a red pen. The flower, I'm going to start with the word the. Let me write the and capitalize it. The flower, a reproductive structure that houses the male and female organs. Oh, that's an appositive. Let me put 2 commas there. Creates seeds in a process called pollination. And I'll put my period there. So notice I have my punctuation in place. Now that students can orally rehearse and write that down. That's going from brainstorming to thesis statement. Let's go to page 183 to see how we would form a thesis statement from a prompt. Here is a prompt that the students received. After viewing the video and reading an article about flowering plants, so the students had watched a video about flowering plants, took notes on it, and then they had another resource that they went to where they read about flowering plants. So this prompt is a prompt in which the students were given a stimuli, a video, and an article. Then they were given a writing prompt, a performance task in which they were using the information they gathered in the article and the video. What does this sound like? It sounds like standardized testing. where the students may watch a video, read an article, and then they have a performance task where the task is asking them to write, and they have to use the information, that stimuli that they had just watched or read, and they have to analyze that information, put it together in order to answer the question or in order to successfully perform the task that was given on that prompt. I'm setting this up so that they get accustomed to this format where they're taking in some sort of stimuli and then from there given a performance task. Now let's go back to the real classroom. I suggest when you are reading your textbook, any articles, seeing any videos, in your unit of study, you could have this question and they could write an essay about what they've read or viewed. This is a great way for you to take your classroom instruction and format it so they get accustomed to stimuli, a performance task question, write about it. And in this case, at the beginning of the year, you may just have the students read a performance task and just create the thesis statement, not write out an essay, only the thesis statement, so that they get accustomed to it, they understand how to do this, and as the year progresses, they complete the entire performance task, and that is the essay. So we go back to our prompt. After viewing the video and reading an article about flowering plants, write an essay. So now students know they're in the essay format. When I see essay, I know what? Introduction, body, conclusion. To report. What does report mean? That means that I'm going to tell you about information that I've read about. I am a reporter. I am not going to give my opinion of this information. I am just reporting on the information that I read about. To report what plants need. So there's my subject, plants, and what's my big idea? What they need in order to grow and survive. So right there on my prompt, I can identify the subject and the big idea of my essay. I then follow the steps to write my thesis statement. Step 1, write SS light bulb. Step 2, subject, go to the subject. Who or what are we talking about? We're talking about plants and flowering plants. And next I'm going to go into my information that I took notes on in the article and notes from the video, and I'm going to look at any background information that I could put in my essay about flowering plants. And I found 90% of the plant kingdom is made up of these types of plants. And in both of the film and in the article, what they need to grow and survive so they are healthy. So I put down in the subject, healthy plants, 90% of the plant kingdom. That does not mean that I'm going to use all that information. I'm just putting down those ideas and pulling it from my notes. So much easier just to find the information and put it where it belongs in my notes, not thinking about forming a sentence yet. After my subject, what do? So that was my first part of my SS light bulb I'm filling in. Next, I go to the big idea. What's the big idea about? Again, I go to the light bulb on my essay. My big idea is that I have to tell you about what they need. So I'm going over here and I'm going to write have needs, need things. So I'm writing down different words that I can use in order to get what these plants need. Then I go over to who cares, why is that important? In order to grow and survive. So that was the other part of my light bulb, was I'm going to tell you about how plants need special things in order to properly develop, or in order to properly develop, grow, thrive. So I found develop, thrive, and I replaced that with grow and survive. Or I could have just put grow and survive on my paper. Next, I'm going to go over to a setting. Did my information give me a setting? Yes, these flowering plants you can find all over the planet Earth and in many different habitats. So I'm going to put my setting here all over the earth in many different habitats. I'm recording that information. I have all my information I need. I am going to go back up and say, I can identify the subject. I'm telling about plants. Let me go over to where my S is, plants. Yes, I have that. Next, I go to my light bulb. Here I said that they need things. So yes, need, in order to grow. So I have properly developed, grow, thrive, in order to grow and survive. Yes, I have that in my thesis statement. So I know, because my thesis statement is my compass, it's going to be what the whole paper is about, tell me how to organize it, and how to stay on topic. It's my guide in order to do that. So that was my plan. And what was I doing in my plan? I was recording my ideas using keywords and simple icons to represent the meaning. After that, I go back and I orally rehearse. So once I plan and all the ideas are there, and I check to make sure that those ideas are covering what was in my prompt, then I'm going to rehearse these ideas so that I can form my thesis statement, and I'm going to use academic language in order to do so. So that's why I have different academic words, I have higher level words here, so that they give me that vocabulary as I'm trying to pull all this together. So I may have something like, on the planet Earth, in many different habitats, plants, which make up 90% of our plant kingdom, need special things in order to properly develop and thrive. There's one way I could say it. Maybe I could say, in order for plants to properly develop and thrive, they need many special things. I could say that. So I'm going back and I'm orally rehearsing many different ways to say this. Once I have how I want to say it, then I'm going to mark my capital and I'm going to mark my punctuation. All over the planet Earth, all. Oh, I may be writing the word Earth, so I'm going to write Earth here and put a capital. Just remember that I have to capitalize that. That's the name. So all over our planet Earth, in many different habitats. Okay, that's my setting. After the setting, I need a comma. Plants, which make up 90% of our plant kingdom, so there's my appositive, need special things in order to grow properly and thrive. There's my period. I orally rehearse it and I write it down. I'm not reading this prompt and then hoping I come up with a thesis statement. I'm using my secret formula to make sure that all those elements in that prompt are put in this thesis statement. So I stay on topic. Once I have that thesis statement, that's going to guide me to figure out what my main idea paragraphs are about, and that way I will make sure my paper stays focused about the big idea. This is my stage 9, writing a thesis statement, whether you are writing that thesis statement generated from a brainstorm or from a writing prompt, which both are necessary in your instructional program for students to have that flexibility of writing a thesis statement. Your next video is going to be stage 10, an informative explanatory essay. Once they have stage 9 down, they can write that thesis statement, they understand how to form it, then you're ready to go into that stage 10, where we are going to take that thesis statement and build so that we have a essay. Let's get started.